Ethan Cole stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in the company lobby, clutching the wrinkled marriage certificate so tightly his fingernails were almost digging into his palm. A dozen coworkers had formed a semicircle around him. Their phones were raised high, flashes popping across his face. "Ethan, you really got married to Ms. Sterling. Stop screwing around. A woman like Ms. Sterling would marry a security guard." The one speaking was Kyle Porter, the sales supervisor. He wore a crisp suit and held a cup of coffee, a smile on his face that said, "I'm waiting to watch you make a fool of yourself." Several female employees nearby covered their mouths and whispered, glancing at Ethan as if he were a monkey that had escaped from a zoo. Ethan did not say a word. His throat felt stuffed with cotton. Fragments of last night's memories were still crashing around inside his head. Victoria Sterling had been blackout drunk. She had stumbled into the security room during his night shift, kicked off one of her high heels, collapsed into his arms, and kept murmuring, "Don't go." And then there was no then. When he woke up, Victoria had already been sitting on the edge of the bed. Her hair was loose, her face bare, and her eyes were cold as knives. She had said only one sentence: "Go to the county clerk's office." At the time, Ethan thought he had misheard. "You make $500 a month. A random investment of Ms. Sterling's earns enough for you to work 10 years. Kyle stepped closer, shoving the coffee cup almost into Ethan's face. "Ms. Sterling was drunk last night. Don't take it seriously. When she comes to her senses, the first thing she'll do is kick you out. When that happens, if you beg, I might be able to find you a job watching cars downstairs." Laughter erupted around them. The receptionist laughed so hard her shoulders shook. Even the cleaning lady stopped pushing her mop to watch the show. Ethan shoved the marriage certificate into his pocket, his knuckles turning white. All right. Stop crowding around. Get back to work." Kyle waved his hand like he was shooing flies. "Ethan, you shouldn't stand here either. Go back to your security room. Don't think getting a marriage certificate means you get to sit in an office. You're not qualified for that chair." Ethan turned and walked toward the security room, his steps mechanical. Behind him, Kyle deliberately raised his voice. "I bet 1 month's bonus they don't last 3 days. I bet 2 days. 1 day. A woman like Ms. Sterling is going to tear him apart once she sobers up." The laughter followed him all the way. The security room was on B1. It had no window, and one fluorescent tube was broken, flickering on and off. Ethan closed the door and leaned against the metal panel, taking 3 deep breaths. The marriage certificate in his pocket pressed hard against his thigh. What exactly happened last night? He had been on night shift until 2 in the morning when he heard someone knocking on the glass. Victoria Sterling was wearing a black dress. One of her high heels was missing. She leaned crookedly against the wall, her face flushed and her eyes unfocused. She said, "I drank too much. Help me." Ethan recognized her. Who in the entire group did not know Victoria Sterling? The ice-cold female CEO. She never wasted words on employees. She walked like she carried wind, and her gaze could freeze a person to death. His first reaction had been to find someone to send her home. But in the entire building, he was the only security guard there. He helped her up to the 3rd-floor lounge and poured her a glass of water. After she gulped it down, she suddenly grabbed his wrist. Her grip was frighteningly strong. "Don't go." Then she fell asleep like that. Ethan sat on the sofa all night. When dawn was almost breaking, he dozed off for a little while. When he opened his eyes again, Victoria was already dressed neatly and standing in front of him. In her hand, she was holding 2 IDs and his household documents. Somehow, she had dug them out of his wallet. "Come with me to the county clerk's office." Her tone was like she was assigning a work task. Ethan had been stunned. "Miss Sterling, you were drunk. This can't just." "I wasn't drunk." She cut him off. "Are you coming or not? If you don't, I'll fire you immediately, and I'll make sure you can't find work in any subsidiary of this group." He went, sitting on the bench outside the clerk's office. He had asked her why. She did not answer. She only said, "Sign." Now he sat in the security room, staring blankly at the faded safety first poster on the wall. His phone vibrated. Kyle had posted a message in the department group chat, attaching a photo of Ethan standing in the lobby. The caption read, "Warm congratulations to Mr. Ethan Cole, captain of our security team, for successfully becoming the first gentleman of Sterling Group. By the way, is the first gentleman still working night shift today?" The group chat exploded. Hundreds of messages flooded the screen. All emojis and ha ha ha. Ethan placed his phone face down on the desk and pressed his nails into his palm. At 5 in the afternoon, Victoria's secretary, Grace Shaw, pushed open the security room door. Her heels clicked sharply. She tossed down an envelope. Ethan Cole. Miss Sterling says you're moving into her apartment tomorrow. The address is inside. After saying that, she left without looking back. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a note written in neat handwriting. Tomorrow morning at 8, I'll have the driver wait downstairs. If you don't have much luggage, you can move today. He folded the note and put it back into the envelope. Then he leaned the back of his head against the cold wall. He did not know what Victoria Sterling was trying to do, but he knew the entire company was waiting for him to be swept out. That afternoon, Kyle came by again. He leaned against the doorframe, smoking. Ethan, don't take this too seriously. Ms. Sterling is all about efficiency. Maybe she thinks divorce is troublesome, so she's just going through the process first and will hand you the divorce agreement tomorrow. When the time comes, don't you dare play stubborn. Her legal team can chew you until there isn't even bone left. Ethan did not lift his eyes. Supervisor Porter, just worry about your sales numbers. My business doesn't need your concern. Kyle scoffed and flicked the cigarette butt onto the floor, grinding it out with his shoe. Fine. Ambitious. I'll be watching. He turned and left, the sound of his leather shoes dragging long through the hallway. The next morning at 7:50, Ethan stood at the company entrance carrying a canvas bag. Inside were only a few changes of clothes and that marriage certificate. He did not want to bring too much. After all, he did not know which corner he would be placed in. A black Maybach stopped by the roadside. The window rolled down. Victoria sat in the back seat. Today, she wore an ivory blouse. Her hair was tied into a low ponytail, and her makeup was light and refined. When her eyes swept over him, Ethan felt even the office air conditioning was not as cold as she was. Get in. Ethan opened the door and sat inside, trying his best to keep to the side and leave half a seat between them. Victoria glanced at him but said nothing. The car drove for 20 minutes before stopping beneath a luxury apartment building in the city center. The doorman bowed and opened the door. The elevator went straight to the top floor. Victoria took out a key card, opened the door, and stepped aside. Go in and look around. Ethan entered and froze. The living room was absurdly large. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the entire city lake. All the furniture was black and white, clean to the point of having no trace of life. On the dining table was a bouquet of white roses. Beside the vase were 2 pairs of slippers. 1 men's pair, 1 women's pair. Your room is the one at the end of the hallway. Victoria changed shoes and walked into the living room. Her voice had no fluctuation. The study is shared. There's food in the refrigerator. I don't cook. You can make your own meals. If you need anything, tell Grace. Ethan put down his bag, his throat dry. Miss Sterling. Why exactly? Victoria turned around, with the sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling window behind her. Half her face was bright and half shadowed. I won't explain what happened last night, but since I got the certificate with you, it won't be for nothing. I'll give you a respectable identity. You only need to cooperate with me and play the role well. What role? Husband. When she said those 2 words, there was no emotion at all. You don't need to do anything. Don't participate in my work. Don't interfere with my private affairs. Live here. Eat. Sleep. Go out when you should. Come back when you should. When the timing is right, we'll divorce. During this period, I'll give you $15,000 a month for living expenses. Ethan sucked in a breath. 15,000. Too little. No, Miss Sterling. I'm not doing this for money. Then what are you doing it for? Victoria's gaze finally stayed on his face for 2 seconds. Since you didn't walk away from the county clerk's office, it means you accepted this arrangement. Don't overthink it. Treat it as a job. After saying that, she picked up her bag and entered the study. The door closed very lightly, but it felt like a dull hammer striking Ethan's chest. He stood in the living room and looked around. Sunlight shone on the white roses. Their scent was faint. He looked down at the canvas bag by his feet and suddenly found it ridiculous. He was a security guard. For no reason at all, he had become the CEO's husband. $15,000 a month. Top floor apartment. Luxury life. Anyone else would have gone insane with joy. But he had only one thought in his mind. What is she acting out? At 10 in the morning, Grace sent him a message. Mr. Cole. Ms. Sterling says there is an internal meeting this afternoon that requires your attendance. Dress formally. The clothes have already been placed in your room closet. Ethan opened the bedroom door. Inside the closet hung an entire dark gray suit, the tags still attached. After putting it on, he stood before the mirror and realized he did not recognize the man reflected there at all. His tie was crooked. He tugged at it, but still failed to straighten it. At 2:30 that afternoon, he took Grace's car to the company. The Maybach stopped at the front entrance. He got out alongside Victoria, walking shoulder to shoulder into the lobby. The lobby instantly fell silent. Everyone, the front desk, cleaners, visitors by the elevator, turned their eyes toward them at once. Kyle was coming down from the second floor. His foot froze on the stairs when he saw the scene, and he nearly missed a step. Miss Sterling. He forced out a smile. Victoria nodded once but did not look at him. Then she turned to Ethan. Sit beside me in the meeting today. You don't need to speak. They entered the elevator. The moment the doors closed, Ethan heard someone outside whisper. She really brought him back. What the hell is going on? Inside the elevator, Victoria stood at the innermost position, facing the doors. Ethan stood slightly behind her to the side, where he could see loose hairs at the nape of her neck. She suddenly spoke. If anyone makes things difficult for you, ignore them. But I need you to remember one thing. Your current identity is my husband. Anyone who questions your identity is questioning me. Ethan's heart tightened. The meeting was held in the top floor conference room. All department heads were present. Kyle sat on the left side of the long table, arms crossed, his eyes repeatedly sweeping over Ethan. Victoria took the main seat. Ethan sat in the chair to her right. That chair had originally belonged to the vice president. Begin. Victoria opened the file. The meeting lasted half an hour. All financial data and project progress. Ethan did not understand a single word. He sat there with his hands on his knees, stiff as a board. Kyle suddenly spoke. His tone was polite but thorny. Miss Sterling, I've submitted the sales department budget for this quarter. Also, regarding your marriage to Mr. Cole, I would like to express congratulations on behalf of all colleagues in sales. When he said congratulations, the corner of his mouth lifted. The people in the conference room looked at one another. No one responded. Victoria did not even lift her eyelids. Noted. Kyle was unwilling to stop. Miss Sterling, there's one more thing. Since Mr. Cole is not technically a company employee, project information could leak with him sitting in the conference room. Should we have him sign a confidentiality agreement? The words were watertight, but the meaning was clear. You're a security guard. What right do you have to sit here? Ethan tightened his fingers on his knees. Victoria finally lifted her eyes and looked at Kyle. Ethan Cole is my husband, not an external hire. He sits beside me because I'm willing to let him sit. As for the confidentiality agreement, I'll have legal handle it. You don't need to worry. Kyle's smile froze for half a second, but quickly recovered. Sure, whatever Ms. Sterling says. The meeting continued. Ethan felt the surrounding gazes stab into his back like needles. He straightened and fixed his eyes on the water glass on the table, not daring to look at anyone. After the meeting ended, Victoria was held back by several vice presidents to discuss business. Ethan came out alone. He had not walked far when Kyle caught up and bumped him with an elbow. Not bad. Ms. Sterling protects her husband pretty tightly. But don't get too happy too early. Guess what everyone in the company is saying? Ethan did not stop. Kyle laughed behind him. They're all saying Ms. Sterling got drunk and slept with a security guard. She was afraid of losing face, so she grudgingly got the certificate with you. You think this is love? Stop dreaming. Once she finds a better way out, you'll be the first one she kicks away. Ethan entered the elevator and pressed the first floor. Kyle did not enter. He stood at the door and waved. Keep going, Captain Security. The elevator doors closed. Ethan leaned against the wall and watched the numbers jump from 12 to 1. He told himself not to care, but the vein at his forehead still jumped twice. He walked to the lobby entrance. A delivery motorcycle happened to rush past his foot, almost hitting him. He stepped aside and saw the giant screen across the street playing an advertisement for Sterling Group. Victoria Sterling was dressed in business attire, smiling at the camera with restrained distance. Ethan looked at his own suit, then lowered his head and smelled it. The collar still had the starchy scent of new clothing. He took out his phone and sent Victoria a message. Thank you. The reply came quickly. No need to thank me. Don't forget. You're acting for me. Ethan shoved the phone back into his pocket and stood there for a long time, until the security guard asked him to move the car. On the third day, Grace brought Ethan to a private dinner. The venue was a private club outside the city. Luxury cars filled the entrance. Grace walked him to the door and handed him an envelope. Ms. Sterling said you can leave after staying inside for 2 hours. You don't need to talk to anyone. If someone stops you, just say Ms. Sterling brought you. Ethan accepted the envelope. Inside was a business card printed with his name and the title, Mr. Victoria Sterling. He stared at that line for 2 seconds and found it absurd. There were about 30 people in the banquet hall, all suits and gowns, glasses clinking. The moment Ethan entered, he felt strange gazes. Some people stared and whispered. Some raised phones. Some laughed. A middle-aged man in a burgundy suit came over with a wine glass and looked him up and down. You're the one Victoria Sterling just married. Ethan nodded. Hello. The middle-aged man laughed. I'm Raymond Walker. I've worked with Ms. Sterling for years. I'll be honest with you, kid. I've seen this kind of thing many times. Victoria Sterling is sharp. She's just using you to block a marriage arrangement. Don't think she actually fell for you. She needs someone with a certificate to shut up the old men on the board. You're just a tool. Ethan's throat tightened. I didn't think that much. That's good. Raymond patted his shoulder. Oh, and let me remind you, tonight's occasion. Her ex-fiancé is also here. Preston Ford, young master of the Ford family. You'd better avoid him. After saying that, he left. Ethan stood in a corner holding a glass of juice. In the center of the hall, a young man in a deep blue suit was chatting and laughing with people. He had handsome features and a natural arrogance in every gesture. A circle of people surrounded him. Preston Ford, Victoria Sterling's former fiancé. Ethan was still thinking of how to avoid him when Preston's gaze suddenly swept over and stopped on him. His eyes narrowed. Then, holding a wine glass, he walked straight over. You're Ethan Cole. Preston stood in front of him, half a head taller, his wine glass resting near his chest. I heard. You should thank me. If I hadn't broken off the engagement last year, how would you have gotten this opportunity? Several people gathered around to watch. Ethan did not retreat. Mr. Ford, I have no grudge against you. No grudge. Preston laughed, swirling his glass. You slept with my fiancée and turned around to get a marriage certificate with her. And you're telling me there's no grudge. Fine. Tell me honestly, what is Victoria Sterling like in bed? Is she as cold as she is in the office? Was she worth your $500 salary? Laughter exploded from all sides. Several female companions covered their mouths, and one man slapped his thigh. Ethan's fingers around the glass turned white. He swallowed. Mr. Ford, that's private. It's not convenient to discuss. Not convenient. Preston took a step forward. You're a security guard. You slept with the CEO, became a kept man, and now you're talking to me about privacy. Let me tell you, Victoria broke off the engagement with me because she couldn't stand the pressure from my father. Now she found a watchdog like you as a shield. And you really think she respects you? She brought you here today just for show. If I were you, I'd roll out now and save myself the humiliation. Before the words had fully fallen, the main doors were pushed open. Victoria walked in wearing an emerald green gown. The satin and crystals made her stand out sharply among the crowd. She swept a glance across the hall. Her gaze finally landed on Ethan. Then she walked over unhurriedly. She came to Ethan's side, naturally looped her arm around his, and looked at Preston. Mr. Ford, my husband doesn't like drinking. If you've had too much, you shouldn't stand here. Preston's expression changed. His smile froze. Victoria Sterling, you're using a security guard as a shield. He is not a shield. Victoria's voice was not loud, but the entire hall fell silent. He is my legally registered husband. If Mr. Ford has doubts about this, you can check with the county clerk's office. Also, please do not refer to him as security guard again. His current status is one level higher than mine. I am his wife. The entire room was dead silent. Preston's face went from white to red. His fingers tightened around the wine glass until the knuckles turned blue. Several women nearby looked at one another. Someone sucked in a breath. A few steps away, Raymond nearly failed to hold his wine glass steady. Ethan felt Victoria's fingertips tighten slightly around his arm, as if she were pinching him. Preston sneered, then drained the wine in his glass. Fine. Victoria Sterling. Impressive. I wish you happiness. He knocked the glass onto the table and turned away. Victoria did not look at him. She lowered her voice to Ethan. Let's go. Time to head back. As they walked out, Ethan heard whispers behind them. Damn. Victoria Sterling is serious. No way. That security guard really has something. Are you stupid? She's acting for the Ford family. Couldn't you tell? In the car, streetlights swept backward past the windows one after another. Victoria sat beside him, her hand lowered onto her knee. She remained silent for a long time. You don't need to thank me, she suddenly said. What happened just now was for my own dignity. Ethan nodded. I know. As long as you know, she said. Tomorrow morning at 8, Grace will pick you up to meet my mother. Ethan turned his head sharply. Meet your mother. You got a marriage certificate with me. By the rules, you should meet her once. Victoria's tone remained calm. My mother is more difficult than you imagine. Be mentally prepared. The car stopped in the underground parking garage. Victoria got out first. Her heels clicked sharply against the concrete. Ethan followed behind her and suddenly felt that this entire thing was becoming more and more absurd. Like a play no one had rehearsed. He had not even been given a script. As he stood in the elevator, his phone vibrated. Kyle sent a message. I heard Preston Ford went after you at tonight's dinner. Ms. Sterling saved the scene. Impressive. But brother, don't get happy too early. You won't survive tomorrow's mother-in-law test. I heard Victoria Sterling's mother is a retired government official. You think a security guard can impress her? Dream on. Ethan did not reply. He put the phone away and lifted his head, watching the elevator numbers jump upward. When they reached the top floor, the elevator opened with a ding. Victoria stood in the hallway waiting for him. Come in. Tomorrow. Wear the gray suit. Don't wear a red tie. Victoria Sterling's mother was named Margaret Lee. She lived in a retired civil servant's apartment complex on the east side of the city. Red brick buildings. 2 old locust trees downstairs. When Ethan followed Grace downstairs, he saw a window open upstairs. A woman wearing reading glasses was looking down, her gaze as sharp as a hawk's. Grace whispered, Mr. Cole, Mrs. Lee has a strong temper. Please be patient. Ethan nodded and went upstairs. The door was open. He knocked twice. A woman's voice came from inside. Come in. Don't stand at the door. Ethan walked in. The living room was not large. The furnishings were simple. The sofa was old-fashioned fabric, and a framed calligraphy piece hung on the wall. Margaret sat in the center chair. On the coffee table in front of her were 2 cups of tea. She lifted her eyes and sized Ethan up from head to toe, as if dismantling parts. Sit. She pointed at the chair opposite. Ethan sat, his back straight. Margaret said nothing. She picked up the teacup, took a sip, put it down, took another sip, then spoke. My daughter told me you 2 got married. Yes. How long ago? 3 days. Margaret laughed. There was no warmth in that laugh. 3 days. I raised her for more than 30 years. And she didn't say a word to me before marrying herself off. Tell me, what gives you the right? Ethan paused. Mrs. Lee. This was Miss Sterling's decision. Miss Sterling. Margaret's voice rose. She's Miss Sterling. And are you her father? I'm asking what gives you the right. Answer that. Don't drag her into this. You're a security guard making a few thousand a month. Where do you live? What do you have to support her with? Tell me, what gives you the right to marry my daughter? Every sentence was like a hammer. Ethan's fingertips pressed into his knees, his palms sweating. His voice was dry. Mrs. Lee, I never thought of taking anything from her. You may not believe me, but even now, I don't understand why she chose me. But since we've already registered the marriage, I'll do my best to do what should be done. What should be done? Margaret stood, hands on her hips. What do you think should be done? Sweeping floors and pouring water to serve her? Or spending the money she gives you on luxury and pleasure? Don't feed me pretty words. I've seen more people than you've eaten salt. You're definitely after money and status. You young people are all the same. Ethan could not refute it. Even if he wanted to, he had no ground. He was indeed living in her apartment. He was indeed taking money she gave him. Margaret sat back down and sighed. Fine. I won't make this harder for you. I don't care about you and Victoria. But let me say the ugly words first. If you dare disappoint her, don't even mention her. I'll be the first one who won't let you off. I have plenty of ways to make sure you can't stay in this city. The door sounded. Victoria walked in. Today, She was not wearing business attire. She wore a white dress, her hair loose. The whole person looked softer. She glanced at Ethan, then said to Margaret, "Mom, don't make things difficult for him." "Difficult?" Margaret snorted. "I haven't even started. Tell me, what are your plans? When will you hold the wedding? If you don't, how are you going to explain this to all the relatives?" Victoria Saturday, her tone steady. "We won't. The certificate is enough. There's no need to make a big spectacle." Margaret slapped the table. "No wedding. What will people think? Your father back then." "Mom," Victoria interrupted her. "This is my business." Margaret stared at her for a long time, then finally shook her head and sighed. "You've been like this since you were young. You never tell me anything." "Fine. I won't ask. But I have one condition. You two live together like a real married couple. Don't sleep separately and make it look like roommates." Ethan's scalp nearly exploded. Victoria's expression did not change. "I understand." After leaving Margaret's home, Ethan and Victoria walked side by side beneath the locust trees. Grace drove slowly behind them and did not urge them. "I'm sorry." Ethan spoke first. "Today's situation made things difficult for you." Victoria did not turn her head. "It's fine. My mother is like that. She'll get used to it after a while." "Why did you marry me?" Ethan finally asked the question he had suppressed for 3 days. "I'm serious. You couldn't possibly choose a security guard as your husband." "Why?" Victoria stopped and turned to look at him. The setting sun filtered through the locust leaves and scattered mottled light across her face. She remained silent for a long time, so long that Ethan thought she would not answer. "Because that night, you were the one who helped me," she said. "I drank so much. Everyone who drank with me wanted to push me onto a bed. Only you helped me onto the sofa, poured water for me, and sat there the entire night." Ethan froze. Victoria continued walking. Her voice drifted over. "I've lived this many years, and no one has ever treated me like that. You think I'm not normal. I think I'm not normal too. But once I make a decision, I don't change it, so you don't need to ask anymore." Ethan stood where he was, watching her back move farther away. Her shoulder blades shifted slightly beneath the white dress. For the first time, he realized Victoria Sterling might not be as cold as she looked. But very quickly, he thought of Kyle's words. She was only acting. He did not dare believe. His phone rang again. It was a message from Grace. "Mr. Cole, Miss Sterling asks that you accompany her to the company tomorrow morning. There will be a board meeting, and she hopes you will sit in." Ethan looked up at the sky. The sunset had reddened half of it. This week had been packed full, yet he felt as if nothing had truly settled. The board meeting was held on the top floor of group headquarters. The long table was filled. Ethan still sat beside Victoria. This time, he wore the gray suit and a dark blue tie. He had remembered Margaret's words all day. "Don't wear a red tie." Though he still did not understand why a red tie was unacceptable. The atmosphere in the board meeting was much more oppressive than the previous meetings. Victoria's folder opened and closed in front of her. 3 directors sat opposite with stern expressions. One gray-haired man was named Victor Lowell. He was the group's second largest shareholder. He spoke slowly, but every sentence carried thorns. "Miss Sterling, regarding your marriage, I personally respect it, but at the board level, there are still some concerns." Victor pushed his glasses. "After all, you represent the image of the entire Sterling Group. The person beside you should also have a background that matches that image. This Mr. Cole, I heard he was previously a security guard for the group." Ethan felt the weight of that gaze. Victoria's response was composed. "Director Lowell, my marriage does not involve company operations. If you believe my personal life affects the group's image, then we can discuss first completing the marriage registration legally and keeping it separate from the company." "You misunderstand." Victor smiled. "I'm not opposing your marriage. I'm thinking that if your husband has no social status for a long time, it will negatively affect your personal reputation and the company's external evaluation. I suggest arranging a suitable company position for him." "What position would be suitable?" Victoria raised a brow. "Headquarters Logistics Department Manager." "I think that would be fine," Victor said. "Give him a title. He doesn't have to do real work, and the salary can be paid by the group. This way, it's easier to explain externally." At this point, everyone understood. Give him the title of Logistics Manager. An empty position, some money, and no one could nitpick. But in reality, he would be marginalized. In plain terms, It was just promoting a security guard one level up. Still a security guard. Victoria shook her head. No need. Ethan won't participate in company work. I'll provide for his living expenses personally. Victor spread his hands. Then if outsiders ask why Miss Sterling's husband does nothing all day and lives off his wife, how do you plan to answer? That is my business. Miss Sterling, you are too naive. Victor's face became serious. You are not an ordinary employee. You are the chairwoman. Every detail around you is watched by media and capital. If your husband cannot even hold a respectable title, what will shareholders think? A young vice president sitting in the corner added quietly. Also, he used to be a security guard. People online have already dug that up. This morning, I saw a post called Ice Cold Female CEO Sleeps with Security Guard While Drunk. Marries rashly. Everyone waits to laugh. It already has more than 2,000 comments. The conference room fell silent for 2 seconds. Victoria snapped the folder shut and stood. Meeting adjourned. She turned and walked out. Ethan stood and followed. Victor added from behind. Miss Sterling, consider this. I'm not opposing you. I'm being responsible to the group. Victoria did not look back. In the elevator, Ethan watched her press the first floor button. Her shoulders were very tense. He said quietly, maybe I should take that position. It's only a name anyway. It won't affect anything. Victoria turned her head. Her gaze was like an ice blade. You don't understand. If you take the logistics manager title, people will only say you were stuffed in through my power. Then even I'll be accused of mixing public and private affairs. If you don't take it, at least I can say you are my private choice and have nothing to do with the company. Ethan's lips moved. Then, did you see the things written in that post? I don't read it, Victoria said. It's meaningless. The elevator reached the first floor. She strode out without looking back. Ethan followed her and saw several employees in the lobby looking down at their phones. As soon as they came out, they immediately hid them, their expressions subtle. Ethan knew what they were reading. He had also searched for that post that morning. The comments beneath it were uglier than the last. Some said security guard's comeback story. Some said Miss Sterling must be blind. Some even fabricated explicit details from that night. He clenched his phone for 2 seconds, then deleted the browser history. That afternoon, Grace pulled him aside and handed him a craft paper envelope. Mr. Cole, Miss Sterling asked me to give you this. It's the key to another apartment she owns downtown, and a bank card with $150,000 in it. She said if you find it inconvenient to live in the apartment, you may move there anytime. Ethan looked at the key in his hand but did not accept it right away. Secretary Shaw, does Miss Sterling think I'm embarrassing her? Grace was silent for a moment, then said, Mr. Cole, Miss Sterling has never made decisions for anyone else. She gave you these because she thought they might be useful to you. If you don't accept them, she won't ask a second time. Ethan took the key and card and put them into his pocket. He lowered his head and looked at the tips of his shoes, unable to describe what he felt. That night, when he returned, the apartment was brightly lit. Victoria sat on the living room sofa with a gray blanket over her legs, flipping through a financial magazine. The television was on, the volume very low. Ethan changed shoes and stood at the entrance to the living room. I think I should take that position. Victoria did not lift her head. Why? Because I don't want people laughing at you, he said. You are the CEO of Sterling Group. Your husband being a security guard does look bad. If I have the title of manager, no matter what people say, at least I'm part of company management. It will look better. Victoria closed the magazine and lifted her head to look at him. Her eyes were very calm. No mockery, no warmth, nor the knife-like sharpness from the day before. You're thinking for my sake. Yes. Ethan nodded. You've done so much for me. I can't do nothing. Victoria lowered her head and looked at the magazine cover for a while. Then she said, Fine. Report the day after tomorrow. I'll set the level and salary. You don't need to care what anyone says. You only need to remember, you are my husband, not my employee. After saying that, she stood and carried the blanket toward the bedroom. At the door, she added, the bed sheets were changed. Your room's comforter was aired out today. The door closed. Ethan stood in the living room. The only sound around him was the air conditioner. He touched the card in his pocket. His fingertips were cold, but somewhere in his heart, a peace began to warm. On Ethan's first day reporting to the logistics department, he was arranged in a private office. The desk was so clean it looked unused. The computer was brand new. A pothose plant sat on the desktop. The deputy manager of logistics was named Samuel Hart, a balding man in his 40s. When he saw Ethan, he nodded and bowed. Manager Cole, you're here. If you need anything, just tell Jake. Oh, and your phone has already been connected to the company internal line. If there are any issues, call me directly. Ethan sat in the chair and looked at this man, who was more than 10 years older than him, addressing him as Manager Cole as if serving royalty. He felt uncomfortable all over. Manager Hart, I'm just holding a title. You should do what you normally do. Don't make special arrangements for me. How could that be? Manager Hart patted his chest. You were personally arranged by Ms. Sterling. Cough. You were personally arranged by Ms. Sterling. How could I neglect you? Don't worry. I'll synchronize all logistics department work with you. If you have any instructions, I'll handle them immediately. Ethan thought, I don't even know what the logistics department does. He sat in the office for half a day and flipped through the files on the desk. They were all procurement lists and repair forms. He did not understand them, nor did he want to read them. Manager Hart brought in a cup of coffee, set it down, and left. At 3 in the afternoon, Kyle pushed open the door and walked in, holding a folder. Well, Manager Cole, nice office. He looked around and clicked his tongue twice. Bigger than mine in sales. Ms. Sterling really treats you well. Ethan lifted his head. Supervisor Porter, do you need something? Yes. Kyle placed the folder on the desk. This is the plan for next month's company team building event. Logistics is responsible for the venue and materials. I came to coordinate with you. Ethan glanced at the folder and opened it. Inside were densely packed spreadsheets. He looked up at Kyle. Shouldn't this be coordinated with Manager Hart? I don't handle specific affairs. Manager Hart said you're fully responsible. Kyle leaned against the desk and flicked the folder with his finger. Manager Cole, don't push this off. We're not strangers. I know your situation in the company isn't exactly great. I also know you feel this whole thing is ridiculous. But let me be clear. Since you've taken the manager title, you have to work. Otherwise, what are people supposed to say? That Miss Sterling is keeping a useless man. Ethan closed the folder. I'll look at it. Explain the specific details to me. So Kyle explained. For 10 minutes. Venue. Meals. Lodging. Buses. Activity budget. Safety plan. And a pile of messy details. Ethan listened in a fog and could only nod. After Kyle finished, he patted Ethan's shoulder. Good. Then arrange it. Submit the plan to me the day after tomorrow. He left. The door closed. Ethan stared at the folder in a daze and took out his phone to message Manager Hart. I don't understand anything about the team building event. Help me put together a plan. Manager Hart replied instantly. Manager Cole, I have urgent work and will be busy until after hours. Please look through it first. If it really doesn't work, you can ask Ms. Sterling for instructions. Ethan stared at the message. It was clearly pushing him off. Manager Hart was polite on the surface, but with one sentence, he threw the work right back. Ethan opened the folder and read through the spreadsheets line by line, searching on his phone. What is an outdoor training base? What is standard room occupancy rate? What is per person budget cap? His head began to ache. At 5:30, Grace sent a message. Ms. Sterling is working late today and won't return until 9. Please eat on your own. Ethan replied with received, then continued struggling through the plan. At 6:30, old Joe from the security room came to find him and brought him a boxed meal. Manager Cole, I heard you got promoted. Congratulations. Don't work too hard. Let me tell you, those people in logistics are crafty. Ms. Sterling arranged you here, so just sit. Let them do the rest. Ethan smiled bitterly. But I have a plan that needs to be submitted tomorrow. Then say you don't know how. Old Joe scratched his head. You're a manager, not a clerk. If you don't do it, can they fire you? Besides, with Ms. Sterling there, who would dare say anything? Ethan did not speak. He stared at the pile of forms and suddenly felt like a clown. He sat in this office, wearing a suit, drinking coffee, taking a monthly salary, yet he could not even handle a team-building plan. At 8:50, he finally forced out the first draft. 5 pages. Even he could not bear to read the content. He sent it to Kyle and added, take a look first. We can discuss issues tomorrow. Kyle replied with 2 words. Impressive. Ethan could not tell if it was praise or mockery. At 9, he left the office. At the elevator, he ran into Grace, who seemed to be waiting specifically for him. "Mr. Cole, Miss Sterling asked me to tell you she won't be coming home tonight. Please rest early." Ethan froze. Where is she going? A business dinner in the South District. After saying that, Grace turned and left, her heels clicking in the hallway. Ethan returned to the apartment. When he opened the door, the apartment was dark. He turned on the light and saw a note on the table in Victoria's handwriting. "There's porridge in the kitchen. Heat it before eating. Don't stay up late." Ethan looked at that line and rubbed the edge of the note with his thumb. A wave of indescribable sourness rose in him. He heated the porridge and drank it alone at the dining table. It was century egg and lean pork porridge. The flavor was light, but the heat warmed his stomach. After eating, he washed the bowl and sat on the sofa watching television, flipping from channel to channel. A push notification popped up on his phone. It was from a gossip account. Sterling Group CEO's new husband spends first day at work sitting in office doing nothing, accused of being a vase manager. The comments below were all hee. As expected, freeloading hard. And a security guard is still a security guard. Ethan turned off the phone and buried his face in the sofa cushion. He did not know whether he was acting as Victoria Sterling's husband, or acting out the security guard comeback drama in other people's eyes. He only felt that every time someone called him Manager Cole, it was like someone twisting his arm. The pain was not heavy, but it was constant. The next morning, Ethan had just sat down in his office when Manager Hart rushed in. Panicked. "Manager Cole, something major happened." Ethan looked up. "What happened?" "The team building venue. Supervisor Porter just called and said the outdoor training base he booked was canceled this morning. They said the management side suddenly changed the schedule. Either that or someone is deliberately messing with us. We have more than 200 people leaving next week. And now the venue is gone. What do we do?" Ethan's mind buzzed. "Have you contacted other venues?" "I've asked. Every nearby place in the city is full on the weekend. The farther ones take 4 hours by car. And nobody wants to go." Manager Hart wiped sweat. "And Supervisor Porter said he already coordinated with you yesterday. You're now the head of logistics. And he's no longer involved." Ethan picked up his phone to call Kyle. The phone rang twice before Kyle answered. "Supervisor Porter. About the venue. Manager Cole. You told me last night that you reviewed the plan. And I also told you I booked that base. Today the base called and canceled. That's your logistics department's matter. It has nothing to do with sales." Kyle's tone carried a smile. "You can't expect me to handle everything." "Right. You signed the plan. You reviewed the venue. If something goes wrong, of course it's on you." The call disconnected. Ethan sat in the chair, looking at Manager Hart standing there, sweating heavily. He asked, "Who signed the contract with that base?" "With an agent named Ryan Webb. He said he had connections with the base owner. We've worked with him a few times before." "You know that agent?" "I know him. But he's slippery. This is probably intentional. Someone may have given him a word to mess with us." Ethan's heart sank. He opened his contacts. He did not have Ryan Webb's number. Only a string of digits Kyle had sent him. He dialed it. It rang for a long time. No one answered. He called 3 more times. Still no answer. Manager Hart whispered beside him, "How about telling Miss Sterling?" Ethan gritted his teeth. "No. I'll handle this myself." He stood and grabbed his coat. Manager Hart called behind him. "Manager Cole, where are you going?" "To find that agent." Ethan had old Joe drive him to the bottom of a rental building in an urban village. Ryan Webb lived here. Ethan had found out in advance. He waited downstairs for 10 minutes. Ryan came down smoking a cigarette. When he saw Ethan, he froze for a moment, then smiled. "Well, Manager Cole, you're looking for me. You signed the contract for the base. Now it's canceled. You owe me an explanation." Ryan exhaled smoke. "Explanation? The base owner changed the schedule. What can I do? You're Miss Sterling's person. How would a little agent like me dare offend you? But that base owner is tough. I'm just a runner. What can I do?" Ethan stared into his eyes. "Someone told you to do this, didn't they?" Ryan's smile stiffened for 1 second. Then he flicked ash. "Manager Cole, you're overthinking. It just happened. If you're really urgent, I can help you contact somewhere in the next county. 3 hours by car. I'll give you a discount." Ethan said nothing and turned away. When he reached the mouth of the alley, he took out his phone and called Margaret Lee. He had no one else to ask. Mrs. Lee, there's something I'd like to trouble you with. Margaret was silent for 3 seconds. Speak. A team-building venue on my side was sabotaged. The agent is Ryan Webb. You worked at the Retirees Bureau for many years and know many people. Could you help me find out who gave him the instruction? Margaret did not ask why. She only said, wait for my call. 20 minutes later, Margaret called back. I asked around. Ryan Webb has someone above him named Carl Webb. Carl is Victor Lowell's nephew. You know Victor Lowell. Right. That director on the board. Last night, he attended a private dinner with the base owner. Ethan held the phone, his knuckles turning white. He understood. Victor had failed to beat Victoria in the board meeting, so he was cutting Ethan's path through logistics. He wanted Ethan embarrassed. He wanted everyone to know this manager was useless. And he wanted Victoria to lose face along with him. When Ethan returned to the company, it was already 2 in the afternoon. Manager Hart was waiting in the office. Anxious. Manager Cole. Supervisor Porter urged again. He said sales already spread the word during lunch that the venue issue is fully logistics responsibility. Next week's team building may be ruined. Many employees have already started complaining, saying logistics can't even handle one task properly. Ethan draped his coat over the chair and sat down. I'll revise the plan. I'll find the venue. Help me list every training base nearby. Give me 3 days, and I'll negotiate with them one by one. 3 days. Manager Cole. Departure is next week. Only 5 days left. Then 3 days. Ethan cut him off. Just give me the list. Manager Hart nodded hesitantly and went out. Ethan sat alone in the office for a long time. Outside the window was the city skyline. Sunlight happened to fall on the pothose plant on his desk. He took out his phone and wanted to send Victoria a message. In the end, he typed only 4 words. I can handle it. After sending it, he did not wait for a reply. He did not know whether he could handle it. He could not even secure a team-building venue. But if he could not handle it, then he really would be the useless man everyone called him. Victoria's husband. Victoria's tool. Victoria's joke. At 6 in the evening, Victoria unexpectedly appeared at his office door. She did not knock. She pushed the door open directly, holding a cup of coffee. I heard something went wrong with the venue. Ethan looked up. How did you know? The whole company is talking. Victoria placed the coffee on his desk. I passed the break room and heard 3 people discussing how logistics manager Ethan Cole messed up the team building. Ethan smiled bitterly. So you heard too? Victoria pulled over a chair and sat. How do you plan to handle it? Ethan showed her his phone screen. He had just added the owner of a training base, and they were chatting. The other side said they could add a half-day weekend slot, but it would cost an extra $30,000. I'm negotiating with them to see if I can push it down to $15,000. Victoria looked twice and did not comment. She only said, if you need me to step in, say so. Ethan shook his head. No, I'll do it myself. Victoria stood and walked to the door. Then she looked back at him. You've changed quite a bit. Ethan froze. Changed how? Before, you only stood there and took the scolding. Victoria's tone was very light. Now you've started fighting back. She walked out, and the door closed softly. Ethan sat in his office chair, staring at the cup of coffee. On the side of the cup was a sticky note with a name and phone number. This base owner was my college classmate. Use my name. The price will drop by $30,000. Ethan froze for 2 seconds. Then he picked up his phone and called the owner. After a short conversation, the other side said, Oh, Miss Sterling. No problem. We'll do it the old way. The price went from an extra $30,000 back to the original price. He hung up and looked at the sticky note. His throat tightened. She had paved the way for him, but not said a word. On the team building day, more than 200 people took buses to the outdoor training base. The venue was huge, with climbing walls, laser tag zones, barbecue grounds, and good weather. Blue sky, white clouds. Ethan wore sportswear and stood at the entrance. The sign-in sheet in his hand was almost blown away by the wind. Kyle jumped off the bus and paused when he passed Ethan. Well, Manager Cole, you really got the venue done. I thought we'd have to postpone. Ethan lifted his eyes. It's done. You don't need to worry. Kyle laughed once. Impressive. I thought you'd have to ask Ms. Sterling to save your life. Didn't expect you could actually do things. Ethan did not respond. He checked names one by one on the sign-in sheet. After everyone got off the buses, he arranged each department to collect equipment. Several young people from logistics were busy running around. He stood to the side, staring at the flowchart and confirming time nodes. When the climbing activity started, Ethan stood near the safety zone. Kyle was the first to rush up. Halfway through, the rope jammed. His hand slipped, and his whole body swung twice in the air. People nearby shouted, "Careful!" Kyle's face went pale. Ethan quickly walked over, looked up at the buckle, and said, "It's stuck." "Wait." He called the coach over, helped reroute the buckle, tugged to confirm it was secure, and said, "You can go." Kyle climbed again and reached the top smoothly this time. When he came down, he walked to Ethan. His expression was complicated. After hesitating for a long time, he said, "Thanks." Ethan nodded. "No problem." At noon, during the barbecue, Ethan helped move charcoal, start fires, and skewer meat. Several employees gathered around. A female colleague asked quietly, "Manager Cole, you know how to skewer meat? I thought you were the kind who just sits in an office." Ethan smiled slightly. "I used to run a street stall back home." They looked at one another. No one knew what to say. Kyle stood not far away, eating a chicken wing while watching, his brows furrowed as if thinking about something. During the afternoon laser tag game, Ethan was placed in the logistics team. Manager Hart gave him a laser gun. He did not run fast, but his aim was decent. He hit several people from sales. A young man who was killed by him lay on the ground shouting, "Manager Cole, your shooting is pretty good. Did you practice before?" Ethan crouched behind cover and said, "I used to shoot pellet guns when I worked security." Everyone laughed. The atmosphere suddenly loosened. At 6 in the evening, the team building ended, and the buses prepared to return. Ethan stood in the parking lot counting heads, confirming everyone had boarded. He was the last to get on, sitting in the last row by the window. Outside the window, the sunset dyed the entire base gold. He took out his phone and glanced. Victoria had sent a message. "Did it go smoothly?" He replied. "Smoothly." Victoria replied. Just one word. But Ethan stared at that and the corner of his mouth lifted on its own. The bus entered the highway. The cabin was noisy. Some people sang. Some played cards. Manager Hart sat beside him and whispered, "Manager Cole, you really stood out today." Kyle's attitude softened a lot. He thanked me. "That's right." Manager Hart lowered his voice. "But let me tell you, don't take it too seriously. Kyle is a chameleon. He thanked you to your face. But who knows what he's doing behind your back." Victor Lowell's side isn't finished yet. Ethan said nothing. He watched the night outside grow darker and the streetlights retreat continuously behind them. He knew clearly that winning this battle only let him catch his breath. Victor Lowell would not let this go. When he returned to the apartment, it was already 9:30 at night. He opened the door. The living room light was on. Victoria sat on the sofa with a tablet in her hand, apparently working. Hearing the door, she lifted her head and glanced at him. "You're back." How was it?" "Pretty good." Ethan changed shoes and walked over, standing beside the sofa. "Today, everyone felt I could do something." Victoria put down the tablet. "You could always do things. No one gave you the chance." Ethan looked at her and suddenly wanted to say something. Like, "Thank you for giving me the chance." Or, "Sorry I kept hiding before." But when the words reached his mouth, he could not say them. Victoria stood. "There are dumplings in the kitchen. Boil them yourself. I'm flying to Seattle tomorrow. 3-day business trip. 3 days. She walked toward the bedroom, then paused. "If you need anything, go directly to Grace." Ethan stood in the middle of the living room and watched her close the door. The light quietly shone on the white roses. Still the same bouquet. The petals had wilted a little, but the scent had not fully faded. He walked to the kitchen, boiled water, placed the dumplings in the pot, and watched the white bubbles roll. He took out his phone and opened the chat with Victoria. He typed a few words, deleted them, typed again, deleted again. Finally, he sent one message. "The dumplings are ready. If you're hungry, I can boil an extra portion." His phone vibrated. "No need. You eat." Ethan stared at those 4 words and smiled. He put the phone back into his pocket, scooped the dumplings into a bowl, and sat alone at the dining table, eating in the rising steam. He was eating happily when his phone dinged again. He thought it was Victoria. When he looked down, It was Kyle. Brother, you saved me today. I'll remember that. But I advise you to guard against Victor Lowell as soon as possible. Yesterday, he asked Ryan Webb to block another venue too. The one you used this time was his backup. You think you won. But actually, he still has another move. Ethan put down his chopsticks and stared at the message. The dumpling in his mouth suddenly felt half cold. On the second day of Victoria's business trip, Ethan received an envelope. It was placed on his logistics department desk. No sender. No postage. He opened it. Inside was a photo. In the photo, Victoria and a man sat in a tea room. The man's side profile was blurred, but he looked successful. Tea utensils sat in front of them. Victoria was smiling. It was a smile Ethan had never seen before. On the back of the photo was a line of writing. You really think she fell for a security dog? Once she squeezes all the value out of you, there won't even be ashes left. Ethan pinched the photo until his fingertips went pale. He turned it over and looked at the front again. Victoria's smile was not fake. It was natural and relaxed. He had never seen her smile that way. He put the photo back into the envelope and locked it in the drawer. He did not question her. Did not send a message. Did not call. He knew someone was waiting for him to collapse. Waiting for him to question Victoria. Waiting for him to argue with her. Then damage their relationship exactly as intended. He could not fall into that trap. But that photo was like a thorn lodged in his mind. He lost focus at work. He checked his phone while eating. At night, lying in bed, he tossed and stared at the ceiling. On the third day, Grace called. Mr. Cole, Ms. Sterling returns tomorrow afternoon. Would you like to pick her up at the airport? What time? 4:50. I'll go. The next afternoon. He arrived at the airport 1 hour early and stood at the arrival's exit. In his hand was a paper bag. Inside was a box of osmanthus cakes he had deliberately gone to an old shop to buy yesterday. Victoria had once casually mentioned, I had them as a child and never found them again. He had remembered. At 4:50, the flight landed. He waited 20 minutes. Victoria came out pulling a suitcase, wearing a black trench coat and sunglasses. Her face looked a little tired. When she saw Ethan, her steps paused. Why are you here? To pick you up. Ethan took her suitcase. Grace told me. Victoria removed her sunglasses. No need to go through the trouble. It's no trouble. Ethan handed over the paper bag. I brought this for you. Victoria lowered her head and looked at the bag. She opened it. Inside were osmanthus cakes, giving off a faint fragrance. She lifted her head and looked at Ethan. There was a very subtle change in her eyes. Impossible to tell whether it was surprise or something else. Where did you buy this? The old brand on East Street. The one you mentioned. Victoria was silent for several seconds. Then she put away the paper bag and said, Let's go. In the car. She sat in the back and opened the bag. She broke off a small piece of osmanthus cake and placed it in her mouth, chewing twice without expression. But through the rearview mirror, Ethan saw her take another piece. Then a third. He pretended to look out the window and did not let her know. Back at the apartment, Victoria went upstairs to change. Ethan placed her suitcase by the bedroom door and was about to return to his own room when Victoria came out holding a card. For you. She handed it over. Ethan accepted it. It was a supplementary card under Victoria's company account. No. This card. Didn't you already give me one before? That one is for living expenses. This is a supplementary card under my personal account. Victoria said, Buy yourself something you like. All the clothes in your closet were picked by Grace. Not a single piece was chosen by you. Right. Ethan held the card, rubbing the raised lettering with his thumb. Miss Sterling, you don't need to be this good to me. Call me Victoria, she said. Ethan lifted his head sharply. Victoria had already turned and entered her room. The door was half closed, and her voice came through the crack. When you called me Miss Sterling just now, it didn't sound right to me. Use another name. Ethan stood in the hallway, the card in his palm still warm. His throat moved. He tried speaking. Victoria. His voice was very soft. But inside the room, the light turned off once, then turned on again. That night, Ethan lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to sleep. His mind was filled with the look in her eyes when she handed him the card. His phone lit up. It was a message from Kyle. You saw the photo. Right. I'll tell you. That man is Preston Ford's cousin, Grant Kane. Victoria Sterling negotiated a partnership with him last year that later collapsed. But that doesn't mean they don't have a personal relationship. Handle it yourself. Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Then he replied, Supervisor Porter. Whose side are you on exactly? Kyle replied quickly, I'm not on any side. I just don't want to see you used as a weapon. That photo was released by Victor Lowell's people. The purpose is to make you fight with Victoria Sterling. Don't fall for it. Ethan placed the phone face down on the nightstand and closed his eyes. In the darkness, he heard a faint cough from the room next door. Victoria was not asleep either. He thought for a long time, then got up, walked to the end of the hall, and knocked on her door. The door opened. Victoria wore a robe, her hair loose, no makeup on her face. Under the hallway light, she looked several years younger than she did by day. What is it? About that photo, Ethan said. I saw it. Victoria leaned against the doorframe. No surprise. No explanation. The man in the photo is Grant Kane. We discussed business before, then fell out. He gave you that photo to make you misunderstand. Did you believe it? Ethan shook his head. No. Victoria looked at him for 2 seconds. The corner of her mouth moved slightly. It was an almost invisible curve. But Ethan saw it. Then why did you knock? I wanted to tell you that no matter what the photo is about, I'll continue standing on your side. Victoria did not speak. She leaned against the doorframe, her gaze lingering on his face for several seconds, long enough for him to hear his own heartbeat. Finally, she said, Come in and sit. It's cold outside. Ethan entered her room for the first time. It was plainer than he had imagined. A small lamp by the bed. A book on the bed. Open, with a crooked line drawn on the cover. He sat in the chair at the foot of the bed. Victoria returned to the bed and pulled the blanket over her knees. In the future, if anything happens, ask me directly. Don't keep it bottled up. Let me ask you, what if I really am using you? She suddenly asked, looking at him calmly. Ethan froze for a moment, then said, Then I accept it. At least you gave me dignity. Are you stupid? Ethan did not speak. Victoria lowered her eyes and turned a page of her book. Her voice was very soft. It's late. Go sleep. Ethan stood, walked to the door, and looked back at her. Victoria lowered her head, fingers pressed against the page, not lifting her eyes. He closed the door. A hallway light went out. He stepped on his own shadow and returned to his room. After lying down, he finally fell asleep. The next morning, Victoria left first. After Ethan washed up, he found a bowl of porridge on the dining table. Beside it was a note. The porridge is in the pot. Serve it yourself. The spoon is in the right drawer. I'm going to a meeting. I'll come back for dinner tonight. He stared at the word dinner for a long time. He served himself a bowl of porridge and drank it. Then he went to the company. He had just reached his office door when he heard people speaking inside. He pushed open the door. Kyle and Manager Hart were standing face to face beside his desk. When Manager Hart saw him, his expression changed. Manager Cole. Something happened. Victor Lowell's side sent an internal email and copied all middle management, saying you have made no substantial contribution since taking office, and demanding that the board re-examine your qualifications as logistics manager. The email also mentioned that you used to be a security guard. Ethan walked to his desk and opened his computer. Sure enough, there was an email in his inbox. The sender was Victor Lowell's secretary. Subject: Compliance Review of Management Qualifications for Logistics Department Leadership. The text was restrained, but every sentence implied he was unworthy. Kyle stood beside him, arms crossed. Brother, I can't help you this time. Victor Lowell is following formal procedure. You really did start as a security guard, have no relevant education, and no management experience. Your review pass rate is under 30%. Even if Ms. Sterling protects you, internal procedures can drag you for half a year. Ethan stared at the email without blinking. Manager Hart carefully said, Manager Cole, maybe you should discuss it with Ms. Sterling. See if there's an exemption process. No need, Ethan said. I'll find a way myself. He closed the computer and sat in the chair for 10 minutes. Then he stood, went to finance to request the logistics department procurement reports for the past 6 months. Then went to HR to request a copy of the company's management qualification policy. He sat in the office and read word by word, underlining and annotating. At the end of the day, he held 2 pages and called Grace. Secretary Shaw, please help me pass these 2 pages to Ms. Sterling. Tell her it's my personal supplementary qualification statement. Ask if it can be submitted to the board as an attachment. Grace said, I'll forward it immediately. At the next day's board meeting, Victor Lowell sat beside the main seat, leisurely drinking tea. Victoria sat at the head of the table. A document lay open in front of her. After all other agenda items ended, she suddenly spoke. Director Lowell, regarding your doubts about the qualifications of the logistics manager, I have a document I'd like everyone to review. She distributed those 2 pages to the directors present. Victor took it. The moment he looked, his face changed. What was written on the pages was not an academic certificate, nor management training experience. It was what Ethan had done within half a month. Resolved the team-building venue crisis. Coordinated interdepartmental processes. Recovered a procurement budget saving. Every item included specific data and signatures from relevant people. On the final page, Victoria had handwritten one sentence. Since taking office, Ethan Cole has increased logistics department operating efficiency by 40% and reduced internal complaint rates by 2/3. His resume is not an academic certificate. It is measurable results. I suggest the board reconsider the standard of so-called qualification. Victor's face was ashen. His lips pressed into a line. Several directors beside him whispered. Some nodded. Some flipped through the data and said nothing. Victoria closed the file. I suggest this matter be tabled. If there are further objections, we can proceed with an independent third-party audit. Before that, logistics department personnel remain unchanged. After saying that, she stood. Meeting adjourned. The conference room door closed. Ethan stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, his palms covered in sweat. He heard the conference room door open. Victoria walked out. When she saw him, her steps slowed slightly. What are you standing here for? Waiting for the result. The result is out. She passed by him. You won. Ethan watched her walk away. The hem of her black dress shifted at the end of the hallway, turned the corner, and disappeared. He leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. His phone vibrated. Kyle sent a message. I admit defeat. You have Miss Sterling behind you, and you have that report card. Victor Lowell got slapped hard today. Ethan did not reply. He put the phone back in his pocket and walked toward the office. When he passed the front desk, several young employees smiled and nodded at him. Manager Cole. He nodded. Sunlight spilled in from the window at the end of the hallway and landed right on the floor tiles under his feet, bright enough to dazzle. That night, when he returned to the apartment, Victoria was already there. She sat on the sofa in loungewear, holding a cup of warm milk. On the coffee table were 2 bowls of noodles. 2 bowls. You're hungry. Right. I made noodles. Ethan changed shoes and walked over. He sat beside the coffee table, picked up the chopsticks, and lifted some noodles. The soup was very hot. He took one bite and inhaled from the heat. Victoria looked at him. Slow down. Ethan smiled and answered softly. The two sat facing each other, separated by 2 low tables, 2 bowls of noodles, and a bouquet of white roses. The light was soft. Outside the window, the city lights glittered brilliantly. The entire living room was quiet like another world. After the noodles were finished, Victoria carried the bowls to the kitchen. Ethan sat on the sofa and looked through his phone. Kyle sent another message. Victor Lowell sold his shares. Internal news. He'll sign the transfer agreement tomorrow. Your manager position is stable now. Ethan put down the phone and walked to the kitchen doorway. Victoria was washing dishes. Water ran steadily. He stood behind her, watching detergent foam dissolve little by little between her fingers. Victoria. He called once. Victoria did not turn around. I think I'm serious now. The sound of water stopped. Victoria's hands paused by the sink. After a moment, she turned off the faucet and faced him. Her wet hands wiped against the apron. She looked at him. Serious about what? Serious, Ethan said. About wanting to keep living with you. Victoria looked at him and was silent for a long time. The light stretched her side profile long. The kitchen was filled with the smell of scallions and vinegar. Finally, she spoke. Me too. When Ethan heard those 2 words, his chest felt as if something had suddenly filled it. He stepped forward and reached out, holding her hand. Her fingers were cold. Her palm was faintly warm. Victoria did not pull away. Outside the window, the city remained filled with thousands of lights. In the kitchen, the faucet had not been fully turned off. 1 drop of water fell into the sink with a soft tap. It was very light. but it was the beginning of a new story. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.